2 seconds, guys. There we go. Got it this time. Okay, I'm back. I've had my cup of tea, and I have had a little bit of a play with the audio. Wasn't streaming properly through to TikTok, so the music was a little bit too overpowering. So, how are we? Ready for another session? Oops. I'll go on the screen set up so I can see the feeds. If anybody's asking any questions or anything like that. Oh, we're off. Use. Hey, Gav. Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin. You will need to elaborate on that, I'm afraid. I'm assuming it's a compliment. There's a thumbs up on that comment. Now, the Steve Austin that springs to mind for me is Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man, from a TV series when I was a lot younger. Bionics, you know, the bionic eye. They have a bionic leg, bionic arm, bionic eye. Takes me back a few years, that. So, if you just joined, I'm starting to work on the lower portion now. Once I've got this bit completed, I'll put some fixative on it, and then I'll start looking at areas that I need to do a little bit more work on. I think if you caught the feed earlier, I was talking about the values around this part of my face here. I had to lighten this area up a little bit to match in with this portrait, because obviously it's two portraits, two sessions I did that I brought together into one image. And this was very dark, the contrast was very high here. So on the reference image, I've brightened it up a little bit so I can get a little bit more detail in it. But when I stand back and look at it, the values don't seem quite right. So I'll need to work on that a little bit more. If that makes sense. And I forgot to get my tape measure out of the shed earlier. I knew it was something I wanted to do. So I want to double check this horizon line, put a tape measure across it and just make sure it's something like, because I did it by eye yesterday. So I need to double check that. Hey, Thompson. Hey, thanks for this follow, Scott. That's much appreciated. Unfortunately, my TikTok prompts are behind me on a monitor. Must swap them round, I think. I'm streaming through OBS Studio. I've got all the settings up on the screen over there. Probably need to swap them over. Might be better. I'm looking at the comments over here more. Noted for my next live. Do you draw at all yourself, Scott? Nobody can hear me okay this time as well. Just getting the hang of this streaming malarkey. But not somebody who wants to do things by halves. I'm streaming to 3 platforms. How's about that for a dude that's turning 60 next week? Hey, Skull Lord Korg. How you doing? Cheers, much appreciated. I'm pretty good. Living the life. This is what it's all about. This is living this life now. Really enjoying it. So I just thought the other week, why not start to share these sessions and have a chat with people from all over the place. So I think this is about my third or fourth live now. So I'm hoping you can hear me okay, and the background music isn't too off-putting. Just something I usually listen to, or I used to do. Apple, the sort of just piano, but obviously lots of copyright issues there. They're trying to stream that, so just try to find a very lo-fi, calm, relaxing bit of background music. So when I'm not chatting or explaining what I'm up to, people can just sit and look over my shoulder and see what's happening. So, and for those who've just joined, this is cheers. That's good feedback. Thank you. Much appreciated. So, just to give you a bit of an idea, this is obviously a double portrait. The kind of stuff I like to tell stories with. So, I'm finished my last piece, which was the Codex of Man, and I didn't really get much chance to sort of model out for my next piece, which I'm putting together. So I thought I'll do a self-portrait, but I'll do a challenge. And it was off the back of going to, I think it was the Royal Academy last year to have a look round. I think it was the Van Dyke, the guy with the ruff, and it's a very, very well eye-catching portrait. And again, the guy's got a little goatee type thing going on. So I thought I'd do something similar, and that's how the idea started with the ruff. So I bought myself a ruff and modelled it in the photos. Took the reference photos, and I thought, okay, well, I could actually develop this into something a bit more personal with it being a self-portrait. So obviously, you've got on the left-hand side, you've got the past, you've got the future on the right, you've got the dramatic sky. Now, obviously, this is in the future because it's going this way. So you've got the sunshine, which is giving. I don't know if you've heard the phrase, every cloud has a silver lining. So that's what this represents with this dramatic, and it's going lighter and lighter into the future. But again, it's one of those things, it's quite a serious portrait because one of the things that people don't realise is if you live in the past, and you sort of get to my age and there's lots of things happened in the past, that living too much in the past, it results in depression. But conversely, opposite to that, if you live in the future and you're dwelling on things that haven't happened yet, that causes anxiety. So this portrait is a little bit based around that. So, and the ruff for me represents my past because I was born before the internet in 1966. So I'm 60 next week. So this is a visual representation of history and the weight of history on me. And I actually worked in IT for a long time, so I'm reasonably competent with IT. And the portrait on the right is sort of represents the future self, looking back at the past. So you're looking forward to the future and you're looking back at the past. But the future one's looking at the viewer as though, challenging what are your thoughts. So if that makes a bit of sense, there's lots of symbolism and underlying thoughts with this, which is what a good painting for me is about. Um, so yeah, so that gives you a bit of an idea. And obviously, once I've actually got some more done on the lower part of it now, I'll be using a fixative to make sure I can't smudge it, and that's all done. And then I'll rework any parts that might need any more work. So in this case, last night I was looking, I had to rework this part of the fake because it was very dark. The reference photo with the lights I took, it was a lot of contrast. So I added some more detail into this side, but I'm not quite happy how this sits around there and there. So I'll be looking at that once I've fixed it. But again, interestingly, the reason why the photos were very high contrast, if you think about how artists worked, a long time ago, they had one light source, the sun. And it's like with Rembrandt, it was a windows in the roof. So it's almost accidental that his work was and looked like it did because the light was at a certain angle from above. And that's now classed as Rembrandt lighting. So when I took these, I just used one light to take the photos. So hence this particular one was very contrasted, but I like the gaze, this challenging gaze. So yeah, so there's lots of things behind it, and the reason why it looks like it does. So, but that's the whole point of a self-portrait. So I did one about 5 or 6 years ago, which told my story, which I suppose I'll make a reel of that again soon, just to tell a little bit background of my history. But this is current now, which I find, and my last piece, the Codex of Man. If you get a chance, I think I've got a couple of reels with a skull and a raven and some books. The books are basically Codex of Man. It spells it out on the spine of the book. It spells out Codex. So all good fun. So yeah, so this bit now is just trying to balance the bottom half out now. And over the years, I've done lots of master copies. So the style of drawing and painting that I like is a mix of realism and almost abstract. So I'm going to try and keep this shapes quite basic, no real detail in them. So it's like with Sargent or Frans Hals. Their work I find amazing. I've done some master copies of their work in the past. And by doing that, you sort of get a bit of a handle on how they worked. So hopefully that'll come across in some of again with the clouds. It's more idealized clouds rather than a direct copy of what clouds are. And I want that to be the same. And same as a rough, especially in this back bit in the shadows, close up, which I'll post some reels with camera work, a bit more detailed pieces. And you can actually see the canvas coming through. So this part here especially is very loose. There's actually not much detail in it. But as a viewer, you don't need to. So yeah, and again, I'm actually a photographer by trade for the last 20 plus years, doing portraits and things. And if you think about how the eye works, if you walk into a room somewhere and you're looking at the light areas, you don't actually pick up much detail in the dark unless you look at the dark areas, because the eye focuses and adjusts to light or dark. We don't see all of it at the same time, which is where HDR photography comes in. It captures the whole spectrum, which is why it looks unnatural. And it's like with painting, a lot of naturalistic painting, most of the light areas is where the detail is. The darker areas, there's very little detail in it because that's how we naturally see and focus on things. We look towards the lighter bits. So there we go. So yeah, that's where we're at with it. And I'm hoping by tomorrow maybe. I've got some work booked in tomorrow morning, some photography work. So tomorrow morning, hopefully I'll be finished just after lunch, and then I'll be back. I'll do another live stream tomorrow afternoon. But I think my partner's working tonight, so I might even have a couple of hours live stream later tonight, working on this as well. So I was hoping to get it all done this week. I might be finishing it in the beginning of next week, but we'll see. No rush. And again, this people are artists out there. If anybody's watching or just curious, this is a kneaded eraser or putty rubber, and basically you keep it nice and warm, and it lifts charcoal up. So you can actually knead it into shape. So you can shape it into a point. Don't know whether you'll be able to see that. So it's very pliable. You can actually make a point with it and then use that as like a rubber or an eraser. You can make it really, really fine. So it does. It is. I think some people could easily mistake it, but no, it doesn't stick things to the wall. I've tried in the past. Yeah. It's actually a good way to test, see whether it is blue tack or not, I suppose. See if it sticks something to the wall or not. But yeah, basically that just lifts the charcoal up. Yeah. Simple as that. And then you just basically squish it about a bit, and you've got a nice cleaner, or a cleaner bit, depending on how long you've had the putty rubber for. And then just go over the drawing where you want it, the values to be a little bit lighter. And this is a paper stump, which are clues in the name. It's basically a rolled paper. It's just for use it for basic blending. You can actually use it because once you pick the charcoal up, you can actually go somewhere else. Don't think, oh yeah, you might be able to see. But you can actually make marks with it then, once you've actually picked up the charcoal. And I'm not sure when they started, but they were used a hell of a lot at the turn of the century by the French school. The Beaux de Paris, they're called. It's a technique I actually came across a couple of 3 years ago now, and I just took to it. I love it, and it makes it more fun. Once you start to realise that things like charcoal and pencil, it's, you can play about with it and have fun with it. Like that, I made that there a minute ago, the mark. Well, okay, I'll go back over it with a bit of charcoal again. And then just blend it back in again. It's just, that's the beauty of it. And as if by magic, the bit I'd taken away is now gone, it's erased. So you can have a bit of fun with it. Okay. Try and get a bit of tone coming down on the other side of the collar here. Doesn't necessarily match up with the light in this scene now. One side of the clouds, but that's the beauty of art. It's whatever I want it to be. And that's quite dark in this piece. And then we have a shadow. And again, this is a lot of this now. What you find is people talk about edge control. So you can see it's a nice soft transition there and a harder edge there. That's what a lot of drawing is about. And painting, it's that edge control. When I talk about it is how softly or quickly you go from light to dark. If it's quick, it's a hard edge. If it's slow transition, it's a nice soft edge. And that gives rise to the form and mass are what make a drawing believable. So there's a slight light there. Again, putty rubber. So actually, I'm going to bring that down a little bit more. And then there's a bit more of a highlight there. And then a bit more of a highlight in here. That highlight comes down like that, like that. Then on this side, again, this is all very rough. But again, it depends on how much and how refined I want it to become. Depends on how much work you put into it. You know, people forget these days that even the guys, even John Singer Sargent, to do a charcoal portrait would take 4 hours. And that was quick, and that was after years and years of drawing with charcoal every day. And building up those muscles and skills to do it that quickly. And if I do a portrait, I've got one at the back of this easel. It took me about, the average is about 5 or 6 hours, which is still not bad going. I used to do oils and pastels, but since I restarted doing all this again 5 or 6 years ago, I was doing a lot of digital stuff. But the problem is people's perception of digital vs traditional artwork. It's seen as not as good, but the reality is you're using exactly the same skills. And then, probably, I don't know how long, about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I came across bag drawings and the tradition of just using graphite and charcoal. I got very disillusioned with it because it's very tedious and meticulous. It's almost like a progression, a process into photorealistic drawing or scientific drawing, hyperrealism. That's fine. But for me, it became just technique for the sake of technique. It loses artistic expression. So, and that's a very personal thing. There's different types of art for different people. So I sit more just into the realms of what's the word? I've got inspiration in my head now. I can't get rid of it. What's it called? Impressionistic. So you've got academic and very technically correct, and then you've got impressionistic. So even then to an extreme of like Picasso and Klimt, and not Klimt even, yeah, where proportions and representing what you see around you doesn't really matter. It's the feeling of it, it's the impression. So I sit maybe halfway or just over into impression it, because some of my things become slightly abstract, and it's that artistic expression. Um, so, and again, that's just taste. It depends what you want. So at this point in time, for the next probably year or so, 18 months, 2 years, I'm sticking with charcoal and pencil as I refine what I do more and more. And then I'll start to add in colour, probably pastels first, transition from this, and then back into oils again, because it's a long time since I've used them. And it's my process, it's just what I'm going through, just to get up to speed, for want of a better word. That's just, that's just my own personal preference. When I do something, I have to go all in. And over the last 40 odd years, I've stopped and started drawing and painting, and every time I've got to a point where I feel competent, I can do it again, learning different styles, different ways of drawing, different ways of getting up to speed. And this time round, I'm now consistent to the point where, in the past life gets in the way. Now it's just doing it. And I'm now 2-3 days a week doing this full time for those few days, and for a couple of days a week just photography. And the photography now pays for me doing this, if that makes sense. But it's great. I'm 60 next week, and it's taken me 60 years to get to a point where I can enjoy it and get that balance right. And I'm hoping now, who knows? I'm hopefully opening a small academy in a month or so, and develop it and start teaching. So, because I'm passionate about it, just as passionate about it now as I was 40 years ago when I was at art college. But none of the stuff that I know now was taught back then. And it seems to be coming full circle, because people are interested in the academic techniques from the turn of the century. And when you think about it, that's where everybody, all the famous artists, from Monet to Picasso, they, stem from those schools, the Parisian schools, and how they taught. So, and I'm intrigued by it, really am. And there are several methods, and I've started documenting it. I've put an ebook together about it, which, if anybody wants, it's on my website. So yeah, I'm passionate about it. And if anybody's wanting to learn and getting disillusioned, and you see all these hyper realistic paintings and drawings, they're one method out of many to get from not being able to draw to being able to draw. So, no grids or anything were used in this. So, but I've used grids and I've used other methods, and there is, like I say, several methods. So, but yeah, that was a long answer to a very short question. At this point in time, it's charcoal and graphite. Yeah, yeah. Cheers, dude. Like I say, much appreciated. So, and that's the whole point of coming on here now. It's just to interact with people and just have a chat. It's quite easy to sit in the studio. I've been now a month, in where I am now in the studio. And I get it. I'm okay in my own skin, but in my job, I meet people every day, and people's properties every day, and you're chatting to people. So it's quite nice to turn around, see people are, asking questions and interact, and have 10 minutes having a chat and talking about what I'm doing. So, again, I'm just using I think it's a 2B graphite pencil now. Straightforward mechanical type pencil. And all I'm doing is lightly going over the top of where I've knocked out or lifted some of the charcoal, and basically it flattens the charcoal a little bit, and it makes the values a little bit closer. And now with a darker one around the edges, where the transition is. So it's a slightly softer transition, softer edge. And again, once I've had something to eat when my partner comes in a bit later, I'll probably do a live stream again for a couple of 3 hours. But what I will do is take a step back, because one of the things I keep mentioning here is it's okay sat in front of your work and working away, but one of the things you need to do is take a step back every now and again, just to get that fresh perspective of how the values are all sitting. And is it working? Is your eye working over the piece? How do you look at it? And when you sat up close to it, you don't get that overview. And that's when some people, you take that step back and, oh, this is rubbish. But one of the techniques that like people like John Singer Sargent, it's called sight size. And when they used to draw portraits or full, they'd sit the canvas next to the person, literally, and they would walk back to a point at the other end of the room, a dozen steps or so, and then they would rush forward and make a mark on the canvas, and it would be a dance backwards and forwards to the canvas. And what you're doing is you're not looking at the detail, you're looking at the impression of the person. And it's things like that I find fascinating. They're just not taught anymore. And again, one of the ways of doing that, if you've not got the space to walk a dozen places, is to use a mirror. What you do, over your shoulder, you look at the piece, and you can see it's as though you're walking double the distance away, because obviously it looks smaller in a mirror. You're looking at how the values sit together. Is there any blotchiness to it, or is the transition, is it nice soft edge or is it hard edge? You're fooling the brain, because it's like looking at a new picture, and it's one of the techniques you use to actually make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. But again, it's a very subjective subject, and that's the whole point of art. When I was a young lad, when I was at art college, I could not stand abstract art or anything that was contemporary. It was realism, that was it. Nothing else. Nothing else mattered to me. Whereas these days, I've got older, I do appreciate, understand, and like some contemporary art. It's not necessarily something that I want to do myself, but I get it. And that's the nature of art. It's a very personal thing. So, and I don't mind if somebody doesn't like mine, because that's fine. Okay, again, one thing about this with one of the reasons that academic art or realist art takes so long is you probably can't see, but there's tiny little darker spots, areas, as I've actually gone over it with the stump, the graphite. Excuse me. So what you end up doing is, again, creating a fine point with the kneaded eraser, and what you're doing is you're lifting small little bits of the charcoal, so it becomes a more even tone. And you can imagine depending on how realistic you want it to be, tickling the canvas with a pencil to blend things in very slowly, and then coming back over it with a needed eraser, so you're getting a really, really smooth finish. Can take hours and hours and hours. So and then sometimes it'll lift too much out, so you've got to go back over it again to actually put that tone back in again. Whereas I'm not that worried about it. I'm just trying to take up the more obvious pieces to create a very gradual but not hyper smooth. Still want some grain in it, some grit, if you like. So I can see there's a few places I need to go back over with the light's starting to go. Times it is 5:30 in the afternoon, and the light is starting to go now. It moves over that way, so we'll have to take a break in a bit. How long have I been on this session? 42 minutes. Yeah, it's probably another 10-15 minutes. I might have a break, or we'll see. And then I'll have to put the lights on, which will annoy me because I've not got daylight lights in here yet. The other room I came out of, we split the room. My partner's in the other room now. I'm in here. I'm sure, grow. Do it, man. Do it. Do it. You'll enjoy it. And it doesn't matter. You make a mess, make a mark. Just enjoy it. You know, one of the things I always say is you've got to remember, like I say, the masters at this, even after they've been practicing for years and years and years, you know, 5 years or so, 4 years at an academy, drawing from life every day, 4 hours to get something that looks like it takes an hour, you know, and they make it look easy. So when you sit down and 20 minutes later you're frustrated because it's not as good as them, well, it won't be. You would be an absolute genius if you could, within an hour, do something that took somebody who was a master, something 4 to 6 hours, and a full size figure. They did them in a few sessions, and it was average of about 12 hours. So it's perspective and understanding that if you do this kind of stuff, just enjoy it. And it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's just it's just really enjoying it and just being creative, because that's ultimately what we're, creative creatures. It doesn't matter whether it's drawing, painting, writing, we make stuff, whether it's engineering, it's all creative. And that's what life's about. And now in the advent of AI, more than ever, that, you know, AI can spit these things out, but there's no story, there's no soul to it. And that's, I'm hoping, I'm starting this now at my age, and I've got the timing right. And I used to work in IT for 16 years, and there's the long story there. And I changed careers, not necessarily through choice, but it happened. And here we are, 40 years later. I'm doing what I was supposed to have been doing 40 years ago. And I've just managed to keep my hand in over the 40 years every now and again. And like I say, for this last 5 or 6 years, it's become more and more and more and more frequent, and I just love it. I've got some ideas for my next piece. In fact, I'll mention it. It's Vanitas and people. So I look at I don't know. Do it. Hey, I'll be here regular, mate. So just do it. I've got no idea how you get it to me, but I can figure something out. I've got a Dropbox and I've got Google Drive. I can make a link available if you want to put something there. I'm hoping in a few weeks' time, once I get the hang of this live streaming, I'd like to do some draw-overs and some draw-alongs as well. I'm even thinking something like on a Thursday night, I'll actually have the bag plates that people can download And I actually take people through doing the academic tradition, some of the basics, um, which I think there's, people are hungry for this kind of stuff, and hopefully, at my age now, give a little bit back. So, and with this one and the one I completed, in fact, let me just show you. Codex of Man. I've got it on here, ready to be framed. A finished piece. So that was the one I finished last month, which is called the Codex of Man. And obviously the raven is a gatekeeper of knowledge. On the spine of the book, it's binary, and that spells out codex. And obviously the skull represents man. You can see this book is actually tilting slightly. So, because the gatekeeper of knowledge, it's tilting. Is it going to go one way or the other, AI? Or is it going to go to man and the AI works? So, yeah. So what I'm hoping by the end of this year is I'll have maybe 6, 12 pieces. I can maybe get some gallery exposure. And like I say, at the same time, teach as well. So, and the next piece, I want to do some sort of take. What the idea I've got in the back of my head, sort of a vanitas, where I'll be a woman. Now, I hope you're not squeamish. I feed my dogs raw food, so I go to the butchers and I get them liver and heart and all sorts of things, and I mix it for them, and they're very healthy and very well looked after. So I can get a heart, and I want to get a model as though she's ripping the heart out of her chest to show the world in one hand, and then in the other hand I'll have a mirror, and she'll be looking in the mirror, but obviously the angle of it, you'll be able to see her looking in the mirror looking at you. And it's this thing about how social media is making people look at me, aren't I a wonderful person? And it's this that whole narrative around that of showing people that they're nice people. Does it make them a nice person? It's the ones that just do it. Yeah, so that's the next piece, and I want to do a series of that, which explores things like trolls and sheeple. So yeah, so there's about 3 items there that I'm hoping to explore now over the next few months. So as soon as I've got this one done now, probably by, well, maybe tomorrow or over the weekend, next week I'll be sat here, a desk behind this. I'll move the easel out of the way, and I've got a desk easel I'll be using to sketch and make ideas up for it. So that's next week, is putting all these ideas together. Excuse me, starting to develop that image. So, yeah. So I've not spoken about those ideas yet, so shh, don't tell anyone. Awesome. Yeah, so one of the things I'm hoping to do in the next few weeks is, I've got the website all set up, is to open a small online academy. So one of the things I've been looking for is a few people to teach. So that's They'll become the founding members of the academy. But again, that all feeds into the fact that I want to try and see if people are interested, if they're interested in drawing, what type of drawing. So, because I'm very much of the my thought process is depending on the type of personality and the type of drawings you want to do, there is a framework and a structure of getting from A to B. So it's like you get people doing hyper realistic drawings and things, and 9.9 times out of 10 they'll use a grid, and it's a mechanical process then of understanding values and tone. And then you've got a sort of a mid ground of that where people want to be able to draw and get a likeness, but without using grids. And grids have their place, and there's a history of that and a whole different argument of kettle of fish. But then you've got people that want to be able to draw from imagination, and then you've got things like Riley, Loomis, and Bridgman, and their systems are sort of created in the 1940s, 1950s for illustrators, and that feeds into that way of drawing. But they all have a common beginning, where it's understanding how to interpret what you see to be able to then draw what you see. And there's 3 or 4 techniques that enable that. You don't have to do it for 3 or 4 years. You can take what works for you and move on to the next section, and then move on to the next section. But each one of them will take you down a certain path. So, and I just find it interesting. It's something I've done, and I've gone through and down a lot of those paths over the last 40 years as I've stopped and started drawing. So I know they work. And depending on your personality type, one's more suited to another. So if you're very you enjoy the overview and enjoy impressionism, then a very meticulous academic style and how that's taught is not going to suit you. You're going to get frustrated with it and you're going to give up. So it's that understanding and somebody telling you that it's okay or that's the way to do it is what a lot of people miss if they want to get really into it and they really enjoy it. It's then procrastination through perfectionism and all these other things. I mean, I went to an art college and we had critiques and all sorts of things. So, yeah. Oops. Just realised my feed to YouTube and TikTok was on the wrong feed. I've only been going 54 minutes. Yeah, I have to have a look at the reference photo for this, I think. To bring a little bit of detail out to the back end of the shoulder. A bit of a highlight to show where it is. I have to remember there's a shadow there from the roof. How long has it taken? Wow. Hard to say with this one. Let me think. Because I've been streaming a few times with this one now as well. So the portraits themselves, each one of them probably completed within the day, so probably 4 or 5 hours worth of work on those. And then the background, I actually wiped out most of the background at one point because I wasn't happy with it. It was becoming too detailed. So I probably did about 3 or 4 hours with the background and then wiped it and restarted. And I've done that again. So probably talking at this point, maybe something around 16 to 20 hours, something like that. Thank you. So yeah, it's probably somewhere around 20 hours so far. Probably another 4 or 5 on it. Or a few hours at least now on this lower section. And then I'm going to put some fixative on it. And then I've got a couple of little bits I want to rework. So yeah, I think the last self-portrait I did took somewhere like about 100, 120 hours. About 5 hours, 5 years ago. So, in fact, have I got it on my phone? Where's it go? I've got it here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. So yeah. So, let's do it with that one. Be better. That was a self-portrait I did about 5 years ago. You can see in that one. And when I was talking about the academic drawings, the master copies and things like that, I was a finalist in a master copy competition a few years ago. That type of thing. Well, the colour's not very good on that. But yeah. But again, it just depends on how much detail you want to go down to. That's the whole thing about artwork. You know, you could do a sketch in a few hours, no problem. It depends on how refined. So on the one I just showed you, the other self-portrait, there's a checkered shirt, and by the end of it, I was sick to the back teeth of it because it took hours and hours and hours, just these little squares to put in the right value, the right the right color saturation. So yeah. And like I say, with these ones, there's a hell of a lot more detail I can put into them because they're pretty much life. If I go back here, wait a minute, can we see? It's actually not far off life size. So depending on how far away you are, thank you. But it's basically it just depends on how much time you have and how much effort you want to go to. Um, some people love hyperrealism. It can leave me a little bit cold because I am a photographer as well. I've done a lot of portrait photography and stuff over the years. So, and if you're just copying a photo, if you've taken it, that's fine. You're doing the photo, it's a mechanical process of transferring the values from one medium to another. Yes, it is art, but it loses the artist sometimes. So, would you class the person as multidisciplinary because they're able to take the photograph and then copy the photograph? That's a different argument for a different day. Whereas, like with impressionistic type stuff, then if you've got an understanding of the foundations of how you can recreate reality around you or realism, it then becomes artistic expression of what you include or don't include. So it's like the clouds here. I've got a reference photo down here that I put into my reference on the iPad, but I've not copied the clouds because I'm interpreting, I'm giving an impression from light to dark, from the past to the future. I wanted it simplified. And then, like I say, with the light here, it's just an impression of every cloud has a silver lining. So it's artistic interpretation, not photorealism. Does that make sense? But yeah, it's just art is art. It depends on what you like and what you don't like. When I was at art college as a young lad, my TikTok live will end in 5 minutes if I don't make the jigsaw match. Hold on, guys. Okay, so go. There we go. We're all good again. So yeah, it depends on what you like. I couldn't stand. I mean, I can tell you a story. When I went to, I think it was the Tate when it first opened years, and it might have been the Tate. I can't even remember. It's 40 years ago, and I can remember being in the gallery as a young man. Out, just finished art college, or I was in my last year at art college after 4 years. And this painting in front of me, it was a blue sky and a green, or blue at the top half, green at the bottom half, and it had a little cross and a little blob of paint, obviously the crucifixion. And it was selling, this was 40 years ago, for £60,000. And I stood there, my jaw just hit the floor. I couldn't believe it. And these two guys in front of me were very, articulate in the way they were describing it. They're suited and booted. And I was a young lad from Yorkshire, and I can't even remember what I said. I must have said a few words because the security guards took one look at me and I went, "It's okay, I'll see myself out." But obviously, since then, I've mellowed and I understand art. I had a very narrow vision of what art was as a young man. And art is for all different types and tastes, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I like it all. I like some of it, not all of it. So, no problem, do. But I'm actually losing light now. The camera's compensating a little bit. So, much appreciated. I know you've sent me something there, Mr. Toxic Reaper, but I've got no idea what it is. We appreciate it anyway. But yeah, so this is what I'm hoping. I'll be back on in a couple of hours. I'll be turning the lights on in here. I'm going to go and grab something to eat. and then we'll have another couple of hours at this. I need to have a look, take a step back from it, and see how the values are working. Because it's like I said yesterday when I finished, I took a step back. I had to actually redo this part because it was very contrasty from the original photo, so I've included more detail in here, more light, but I'm not happy how these areas now are sitting, so I've got to have a think about this, and I'll probably have a look at that, but I want to get this bit a little bit more refined before I drop back onto that, and then I'll be ready for fixing it. And then if I need to bring any more dark areas or lighter areas in to balance it all out, that'll be the final stage. So there we go. So I'm going to call it quits for now. Cheers. Fantastic. Thank you for following. But I'll be an hour or so for something to eat, and then I'll go live again. And hopefully I'll see you, have something to eat, bit of relaxing music, make yourself a cup of tea, sit back, and we'll have a chat. So thanks, guys. It's been great company. I'll see you later. All right.